Hey everyone, sycra yasin here, and today I'm doing a speed painting because I got a lot of requests from people to do a speed painting, and I thought I would try doing a landscape or an environment or something because I haven't done that in, God, it's over a year, probably more. But anyway, yeah, so just starting as usual with scribbles, but I'm not worrying about the colors at all. And the reason is I'm planning to try this experiment with a gradient map and an adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a gradient map adjustment layer, and I'm going to use colors in that. So here you can see I'm doing that. So what it's doing is it's making a gradient, but I get to control the stoppers, so I'm dictating what value equals what color. And so I just went from purple to like a greenish, just following the color wheel. And that's how I always do gradients. I tend to go around the ring of the color wheel. Like you might see, I have a Coolerus color wheel extension thing that's on the top right hand side, and you'll see the ring around it. So I just follow those while darkening and warming or cooling the colors. And then I just threw in some red, yellow, and orange in random spots to just create interest, like random variation, weirdness. And that's just because, I don't know, it's fun to work with accidents. I mean, it's something that you get in traditional where you can't always plan for things. Bob Ross called them happy accidents. And with digital, it's possible to do that too, but it just requires a bit more work to create things that are unexpected. So that's one way of doing that. So for the image itself, I kind of wasn't sure at first what I was doing, but at this point I'm pretty much settled in what I'm doing. It's going to be a ship and a floating city thing, and I'm using just a few brushes. I started trying to use custom brushes in the beginning, just some weird brushes, but I decided against it because I just want to use my default brushes, and here I'm just putting in some perspective to make sure that I'm getting the right plane. So for instance, if something is above the horizon line, you're going to be seeing underneath it, right? So we see underneath, we see the bottom of the ship, right? Because it's above the horizon. Whereas if it's below the horizon, like the city itself, you're looking down on it. So that's why horizon is very important. But going back to the brushes, I mainly just use 4 brushes. I use the soft round, a big soft round brush for blending areas, for creating atmosphere, and for creating very smooth gradients. And then I have a hard round brush for detail work, or anything that needs to be defined. And then I have a chalk brush for anything that's very textury, like mountains or rocks or something. And then I use my sketching brush for everything else, because it's an all-purpose brush, the sketching brush. And you can get all the brushes I use at sycra.net under resources. There's the tool presets that I use, and you can download them. Oh yeah, and I use a smoke brush, which just creates like smoky type stuff for clouds. And then I use smudge tools. I use 2 smudge tools, one for painterly streaks, which you can see in the sky with the clouds, and I use another smudge brush for just a soft blend. So here what I'm doing is a lot of back and forth with values, pushing some things forward and knocking other things back. And the way you do that is via contrast of light, dark, light, dark. Like you want a light thing, and then you want a dark thing, and then you want a light thing. And just going between these lights and darks is what's going to give you the depth, the illusion of depth. You'll also see that I turn on and off my values layer. I have just a black layer set to color. You can set it to hue or saturate. Wait, no, I think hue, saturation, or color all work the same way. You see here I'm using the Painterly Streaks brush for the sky. And yep, some smoke. So I mean, this is pretty straightforward. I'm really not sure what I'm doing, so I can't, you know, give too much advice on what I'm doing because, again, I don't do environments, so I'm pretty terrible at it. But here what I'm doing is just using some color dodge stuff, and I can see that there's some things like looking wonky, especially with the closest city thing. It looks like poker chips to me, just stacked on top of each other. And then I'm not really sure what's going on. I thought I should duplicate this ship thing. I should have another one in the background. And that's for a sense of scale and to feel more like a world. But what I have to do is, okay, because I moved it in a different location, I had to lower the opacity so it feels more like, so you see more of the sky behind it, and that's to create atmospheric perspective, because when things go back into perspective, they get more colored towards whatever the air is, the sky. So the reason for that is just because they're further away, so there is more air in between your eye and the object, and so the object is sort of tinted by the air color. And you'll see that a lot with mountains, you know, when they're towards a distance. Let's say it's a blue sky, and you'll see the mountain gets a bit more blue and less contrasty the further back it is. So I had to do that with the small ship, but then I also had to change the values because it's not facing the light in the same way as the other ship is. It's actually more in shadow. So then I had to, you know, fix that and make it so that part's more in shadow and the light is just a rim light. And all this comes down to fundamentals, just understanding the way light works. I made a series, Foundations of Light and Shadow, which cover most of what I'm talking about when I say the fundamentals. But the main concept is to understand that this is all about light. It's all about light and materials, you know. If you understand how light works, you can do pretty much any painting. Here what I'm doing is I'm using the liquify tool, and I just took a gigantic brush and I just shifted the city because it was kind of wonky in perspectives, and that's why in perspectives in all three of them. Its perspective was wonky, and it's something that's very quick and easy to do. But it's also why I flip, is to make sure, you know, you're able to see things better, you know, mistakes and stuff. And then I also elongated the spire in the background, and that's because I just felt it was lacking personality. And one way of getting personality in your image is to, okay, so let's say you have something that's narrow and tall. Well, if you want it to have more character, make it more narrow and more tall. If something is very wide and short, if you want to give it more character, make it more wide and more short. So you're just exaggerating what makes it different than something that's very boring. So something that would be boring to me would be something like a perfect cube where everything is identical. Unless it's like a Borg cube, then it's okay, I guess. But anyway, yeah, when things are stretched one way or another. Same thing with a face, you know, the nose. If the nose is really big and the mouth is small, make the nose bigger, the mouth smaller. It's the same result. And you might notice that I'm constantly flipping back to the sketch. That's because I don't want to lose the energy. And what I just had done is I duplicated the entire painting. Most of this is painted on one layer, sometimes two layers, and then I just merge it down. But I duplicated the entire painting, and I shifted the hue entirely. Using just Control U to open the hue and saturation, shifted the hue, and then so that's on its own layer. Then I put a layer mask on it, put it to black so that nothing shows up. And then with a layer mask, you can paint with white or gray or any other value, but if you paint with white, that reveals what's underneath. So I was able to create a bunch of color variation just by revealing parts of that. adjusted saturated or adjusted hue image. And a lot of this is just playing with colors. I decided to treat my landscapes a lot more like I'm treating my characters, and making them very crazy designs, crazy colors, crazy patterns. Nothing needs to be real, and it was, I was hoping it would be more fun, and yeah, it was more fun to do it that way. Just putting more of myself in the images instead of trying to create an image that's very believable or real, because I'm not personally a fan of that, so I don't think it's the best thing for me to pursue that. I still prefer doing characters, though, so it's not like I'm going to become an environment artist, even if a bunch of people are like, oh, you should do more environments. No, I don't want to do environments. I don't enjoy doing environments. But if you enjoy doing environments, I recommend you paint environments. But I guess once in a while it's not bad to do some environmental work. And here, just defining things more, you know, making this feel like I'm using the cables to lure your eye into the image, and I'm making them chrome because no reason, just made them shiny and chrome. And again, to understand how to render things to make them look shiny, that's just materials. It's understanding things like well, how reflective are things and what is in the environment? So if this environment has sky coming from the top, then it's going to reflect that. And there's something interesting about chrome. I think it's chrome. I think, because there's different materials, but I think with chrome, if you get a chrome sphere, everything reflected in it is upside down. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what it is. So anyway, more detailed work, or detail work. And I have some mountains in the background. That's pretty much just to ground this image, to make it feel like it's in a bigger environment than it is. And keeping all my details to the focal points, to the parts that are not just closest to us, because things that are really close tend to be blurry. Things that are way in the distance tend to be blurry. This is if you're focused on the midground, which I think is a good idea. You focus on the midground. Same with a camera, right? You want to focus on the midground so you have some foreground elements that are out of focus, some distant background elements that are out of focus. And now it's just some post-production stuff, coloring the sky, and using color balance layers, just making it more warm. And yeah, fixing the values, because I felt like the focal point elements needed to be darker in value, but also have brighter highlights. So I needed to darken it so that the highlights here that I'm putting in will show. And pretty much that's it. Just adding some more stuff to the engines and stuff. This blue glow. And yeah, I guess this isn't much of a tutorial because I really don't know what I'm doing. So if anything, I would say just experiment. Practice. So I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.